So Asus has entered the ultra lightweight, ultra sweaty tryhard gaming mouse market with the Harp Ace, which was the AimLab collab. And now there's a bunch of attention on Asus ROG and their gaming mice. So let's take a look back at the last two gaming mice they released before that, the Gladius Tree and the Keris wireless aimpoint, that share the same sensor and probably a similar chipset to what you find in the Harp Ace, but have much weirder shapes than the Harp Ace and have very unique, interesting designs and pretty stacked spec sheets. But the question is, are they worth it? Are they good choices? Well, let's jump straight into it, starting off with both of these mice's similar features, which is the fact that they both use the Asus wireless aimpoint sensor. Now, this is supposedly one of the best sensors you can get on the market right now from the test from like rthings.com. This is supposedly a $33.95 sensor underneath here, so no surprises whatsoever. As far as click latency and input lag goes, the tests online seem to suggest that Asus ROG mice, at least the latest gen one with the aimpoint stuff, seem to keep up with Razer and Logitech quite well and are one of the best that are not from these big two companies that can keep up. So that's pretty interesting. They also both have very similar clicks. They both use the Asus ROG micro switches, but they're tensioned a little bit differently. The Gladius Tree has very light and crisp and fast clicks, whereas the Keris Tree has a little bit of a stiffer click feel, which might or might not be a good thing. If you think the switches in here by default suck, both of these are also HOTSWAP, so you can swap out for the Omron switches that are included in the box with this gaming mouse, which is great. As for the coating, they both share a similar coating. They both have like these matte plastic bodies with RGB Asus logos if you care about RGB. And they have kind of a slightly textured finish on the gray areas, which is like the slightly rubberized feel. The only difference here is that on the Gladius Tree, you've got this weird textured rib side that you also find on the Harp Ace for extra feel on your thumb and your fingers, which is not found on the Keris wireless. But if you don't like the feel of the stock gaming mice, both of these mice come with grip tape in the box, which is the same one you find on the Harp Ace that you can stick on that feels very, very nice in my opinion. One of the best grip tapes I've ever used. It's got like a fabric rubbery material and it's very thin, which I like. They also come with extra mice feet in the box, so very nice accessories all around. If you want to open it up, mod it, change things, it has all the things you need. The bottom also has a bunch of controls, which is great. You can change the DPI settings. You can pair it with a dongle if it somehow loses connection very conveniently on the bottom. And they also have a switch to switch between normal 2.4 GHz wireless mode as well as Bluetooth on the bottom as well. So you can basically never have to use Asus's Armoury Crate software, which I know is a big deal breaker that prevents a lot of people from actually picking up an Asus ROG mouse. Good thing is you don't have to, because you can change DPI settings on here, no problem, and everything will work just fine even without Armoury Crate. Both of these mice also have excellent battery life. I find that I could use them for days on end without worrying about charging, and that's probably because they aren't so light that they need to save weight on the battery, which leads me to the weight. Both of these mice are like reasonably lightweight, but they're not super lightweight. So this is 80 grams, the Gladius Tree, and then the Keris is about 74 grams that I weighed on my weighing scale. Now this makes it like okay in terms of lightness, same weight as the G303 Shroud, but if you're someone who's used to like 55 gram gaming mice, then it's not something you want to look at. I would really say though, the Keris could probably benefit from a ultra lightweight version, because it is a shape that I would say has a lot of potential to be a very popular ultra lightweight mouse, but at 75 grams, it's too heavy for a lot of the enthusiasts to even look at. The scroll wheels on these two mice are similar, but not exactly the same. They both feel quite light and quite crisp in terms of their notches, but the Keris, just like with the clicks, has a bit of a stiffer, mushier feel on the scroll wheel than on the Gladius Tree. As for the thumb buttons, this is where both of these gaming mice are completely identical. They basically have no pre-travel as far as I can tell, but they do have quite a bit of post-travel that makes it spongy to squish, which some people like, some people don't like. Personally, I don't really care too much about thumb buttons. As far as wireless performance, tracking, and the mice feet go, they're basically the same since they use the same feet and the same sensor, and both are really good and I have zero issues with them. Now let's move on to more subjective things that are probably more important and actually where these two mice start to be different, mainly the shape. So let's start with the Gladius Tree shape. So this is a right-handed ergonomic gaming mouse shape, but it's also very, very different to most ergo shape. For one, the rear of this mouse is kind of like big and fat and bulbous, almost like a queen bee. And then we've got a very narrow side and a very narrow front, which does help in making this mouse very easy to pinch, but also does make this mouse a very unique feel in terms of ergo mice. There are very deep grooves on the clicks, there are very deep grooves on the thumb groove as well, which guide your finger into kind of a very forced position, so like you have to put your finger in a certain way. It's not the kind of ergo mice or the kind of mouse where there are very little grooves so you can hold it however you like. This mouse kind of has a ideal grip size and nothing else. For my 18cm by 10cm hands, this ideal grip style is like a relaxed claw. It's like a slight arch on my fingers, but if you have bigger hands, you might have to, arch your fingers more steeply. If not, you won't have a comfortable time with this mouse. Even though this mouse does look quite big and it's a kind of like ergo mouse shape, I would actually say that it's not really meant for big hands because of how narrow the front part is, and how if you've got really long fingers like 20cm and above hands, I don't think the Gladius tree will be right for you. But if you have hands that are about, I would say 16 to 19cm long, they're probably the best size for the Gladius tree if you're looking for an ergonomic gaming mouse with its specs and its weight and everything else. I do think it's a very comfortable shape though, but it's too heavy, and the fact that it's ergo means it's not really for me. As for the Keris, this one's more interesting to me, and I personally will come off straight away and say that if the Keris had a lightweight version, it could possibly be my daily driver. It is a very natural feeling shape, I would say, the Keris, for anyone using a claw grip with a similar hand size to mine. So when I hold this mouse, it just feels like I'm cupping my hand quite naturally on the table, and I do find myself having a lot of comfort with this gaming mouse. Once again though, it's at 74 grams, 75 grams, which is too heavy for me because I'm very used to like 50-gram mice, but it is a very comfortable shape. I think the best way to describe this shape is if you took a similarly sized ambidextrous mouse and then tilted it to make it more ergo. It does have some traits of an ambidextrous claw grip mouse, but it has a tilted hump and deep thumb grooves that make it definitely a ergonomic mouse rather than an ambidextrous claw ones. So if you're someone who's kind of in between, like you don't want something that's fully ambidextrous, but you don't want something that's a full-on ergo with deep grooves, then the Keris is definitely a very interesting choice. As for size-wise, my hands are 18cm by 10cm as I've said, and I find that it's a comfortable mouse for claw gripping, but definitely no other grip. I would say that if you were to use this mouse, it only work well if you have small hands and you're trying to palm grip it, or if you have similar size hands to mine, you can claw grip it. But if you're trying to fingertip grip this mouse, it definitely isn't built for that, especially with this kind of tilt to the body that tilts your hand. That doesn't really play well with fingertip grips in my opinion. However though, I do like this shape. I think it's a very, very good shape. Personally think it fits me better than even the Harp Ace AimLab collab, and I would say that if ROG made a Keris 2 that was like 55 grams with lighter clicks, I would use it as a daily in a heartbeat. All in all then, should you buy the ROG Gladius tree and the Keris? Well, I would say that they are definitely quite interesting gaming mice that you should look at if they fit your hand sizes and your grip styles. Because for the price they're going for, as far as I can tell, the Keris and Gladius tree come in at about 100-120 Singapore dollars. They are very competitively priced for the specs they have. Sure, they're not super lightweight, but they do make up for it with having a lot of good features, big battery life, and RGB, which might be more important to some gamers than just having a lightweight gaming mouse. And they do have some unique and esoteric shapes. Now, these shapes are going to be very offensive to some, and if they don't fit your hands, you're going to hate them because they're very weird shapes. But if you do end up finding that you do like the shape of these gaming mice, you might end up seeing that these two gaming mice are a good deal. So it really depends on the grip style that you have and the hand sizes that you have. Because if it's going to be a good fit, the ROG gaming mice are looking like pretty decent deals, especially since how they always go on sale. So in conclusion then, should you get the ROG Gladius tree and the ROG Keris? Well, I would have to say it really comes down to the shape and size of your hands. Like if you have a grip style and a hand size that fits either one of these mice, you are in for a treat because these weird and esoteric shapes do feel really comfortable if they are right fit for you. But if you're someone who doesn't like these shapes and doesn't have a grip style that fits these mice, you will absolutely despise and hate them since these shapes are very weird and very restrictive and don't allow you to just use any grip under the sun. Like you have to use certain grip with this mice if you want to enjoy them. But if you do find that you're a good fit with this mice, you are going to find a pretty well-built gaming mouse with good specs, and for the price they're often going for, which is often even less than 100 Singapore dollars due to the fact they're always on sale, you are in for a treat in terms of a high-performance gaming mouse. And if you're not someone that really cares too much about having the lightest weight gaming mouse, then definitely consider the Keris and the Gladius tree. They might not be world beaters and probably won't be the perfect fit for most people, but for some people, just like the Harp Ace, it is going to be a pretty good choice to consider.